Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Cinema Condition, a podcast devoted to analyzing films and what makes a movie a movie. I am your host, Raul Alejandro Mendoza, a filmmaker, podcaster, and lover of cinema. Today, I am joined by my wonderful friend, Alejandra. They are a English major and a fellow lover of film as well. And today, they have selected In the Heights. Hey Alejandra, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm okay. I'm excited to be back here. Actually, it's been a while.
Too long. Been too long.
Yeah, way too long.
Yeah. It's been way too long, I know. The podcast went on a hiatus and then my life went through like a really big like shift and a lot of things happened. And since we stay connected through Facebook, I'm pretty sure you saw that I like changed that I moved to like three different cities in 2022. So um
Yeah, I did. I saw all of that, and whenever I logged in, I saw like your posts on the timeline. It was like, oh, I'm here now, and I'm doing this, and we're going to this place, and we're showing things over here, and I was like, wow, that's really crazy. That's a lot of stuff.
yeah. Uh, Luckily enough, I have not moved ever since where I currently live. I'm good now. I hope I don't move again because moving sucks. But yeah, I'm glad that you're back. Alejandro has been on this podcast twice now. We did a really good episode on Inglorious Bastards from Quentin Tarantino, and we did another really good episode on what was it? I know we did a second one.
It was like Miss.
Les Mis, yes.
Yeah,
Oh, one of my favorite episodes. Actually, I really liked our conversation for that episode. Um, Also that movie just is so good, and I loved rewatching that movie. Yeah,
yeah, it is. It's weird that it came from the same guy who made the Cats film.
I think that was a part of our conversation at that time too, right? We were just kind of like
Yeah, it
dumbfounded.
must have been.
Yeah, you're like, wow. Uh, Les Mis. Um, there's the other film that he made that was really good.
The King's Speech.
He made the King's Speech. He didn't make what's it called? The one with Eddie Redmayne and
Oh, Danish Girl.
the Danish Girl. Yes, he made the Danish Girl, right? It's
Yeah,
like, and
it is.
then just soils it with with, with
With
cats.
whatever Cats was.
Yeah. Oh my God. But yeah, Alejandra, though it has been a while, you want to reintroduce yourself to them if you want, I guess, because it has been a while now. It's been like a good year in between this since the last
Yeah,
episode.
it has been. Well, I mean, not a lot has changed actually. Like I'm Alejandra. I'm now 25, which has changed. Um, I'm an English major, and I'm like about to graduate, which has also changed. Um, and yeah, I try to keep up with like cinema and all. Although during the pandemic, it was more difficult to keep up with like movies and all that stuff. Especially because now everyone that has split into like different streaming services, and
Mm-hmm.
like I already had Netflix, right? And then everyone was like, oh, Disney Plus, and then Paramount, and then Fox, and then Stars Plus, and then I don't I don't have the money to pay for all of these. Okay, like how am I supposed to watch them? And usually the cinema near my house doesn't really show all the movies.
Yeah.
They only do like a few or like a limited run, so it's hard to keep up. But I try my best. And this was one of those movies that I didn't go to see it on the like at the theater because
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't. It had like a limited run, and when I had time to go see it,
Yeah.
it wasn't there anymore. So
Yeah. I hate to break it to you, dude, because I know how much you wanted me to go see what's it called? Mary Poppins Returns.
oh yeah,
Um to this day, Alejandra, I have yet to see Mary
that's
Poppins
fine.
Returns.
That's fine. That's fine.
But I watched In the Heights twice now. It's twice now.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes up for it.
Yeah, it makes up for it, right?
Of
Um
course.
yeah. I was just I know that I was like I know how much Alejandra was telling me like you need to watch it, you need to watch it, you need to watch it and it's like I didn't watch it and and I would tell her like, "Oh, I'm gonna get to it. I'm gonna get to it," and then it's just like, "No, I didn't get to it."
Yeah, well, actually, now it's been so long since I told you to watch that movie that now I think it's not really that good.
I think you were just like really what's it called excited about the experience of being able to see that, right, and like being able to talk to Lynn and all that. Like,
Yeah, I think I was entrapped in that
yeah,
situation,
yeah,
but it's not really that great.
yeah,
So, I mean,
yeah,
it's whatever, I guess. If you watch it or not, it's fine.
yeah. You're like, yeah, I don't care anymore. Oh, you good? But
Yeah, I think there's better movies to watch.
yeah, yeah, for sure. But yeah, we're not here to talk about Mary Poppins Returns. We're here to talk about In the Heights. This is Alejandra's first of two picks that she has this season because, of course, she's one of the people that I let get like an extra one in here. She can do two, three if she wanted to, but she gets two just because I think she's kind of proven herself to me and the audience that she does a pretty damn good job at being able to do these podcasts, and we always have really good conversations. But we have never talked about a film from John M. Chu before, which the only other one that we probably would have talked about was probably Crazy Rich Asians, and nobody has selected Crazy Rich Asians. So, that means I do have to introduce you all to the filmmaker known as John M. Chu. And there's not like a lot of information about Mr. Chu, but there is enough to at least get a little bit of an intro for him, because he is, significantly a pretty like new director out here. So I tried to write as much as I could. So John M. Chu, born on November 2nd, 1979, in Palo Alto, California. Chu began making films in the fifth grade when he got a video camera to document his family's vacations. He instead decided to make home movies starring his family. John M. Chu received his BFA in film and television production in 2003. Chu had opportunities to direct films for Sony, but plans fell through on both occasions. One of them was the adaptation of The Great Gatsby before it was sold to Warner Brothers. Chu derives a lot of creative inspiration from dance, which is why his films include a lot of dancing. His breakout film was the highly successful Crazy Rich Asians, and then in 2021, he directed the film adaptation of In the Heights. He is currently working on a Dr. Seuss adaptation and an animated film. I'm not sure if Chu's actually working on the sequel to Crazy Rich Asians. I know that they're making that movie, but I don't think he's on that one. But yeah, little introduction here for Mr. John M. Chu. Not a lot going on here with his work that I'd say that would have a lot of notes here. There is a lot of controversy surrounding John M. Chu that I think that would take a lot more time now. We would be adding to this, but a lot of controversy surrounding Crazy Rich Asian and its portrayal of Southeast Asians, and that was a big part of that film. But that can be saved when we talk about Crazy Rich Asians. But whenever anybody decides to pick that, but I'm gonna go ahead and get into In the Heights now. I'll read this introduction, and yeah, let me just kind of get into this. I'm sorry for anybody who's listening to this and you're thinking like, what's going on with Raul? He's not usually like this. I was really exhausted right now. Like I was who's been having a pretty rough these last couple of days. Raul just watched his third movie of the week now, so actually fourth of the week. So it's something right now. So let me go ahead and read this introduction. Development of the screen adaptation of the original musical by Luis Manuel Miranda, and you know how to say that name?
It's Kiara.
Kiara Alegria Hughes, back to 2008. Kenny Ortega was set to direct the film and release it in 2011, but by March of that year, the film was canceled. The film was canceled because Universal was looking for bankable Latino stars instead of using unknown actors. And Alejandra, I would like to tell you that the examples they used were, it kind of makes you laugh a little bit. Jennifer Lopez
Of course.
and Shakira.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah. Um, in May 2016, after the success of Hamilton, Lin Manuel Miranda announced that he was co producing the film with none other than Harvey Weinstein under the Weinstein Company. On the Weinstein Company banner, June of that year, John M. Chu came on board to direct the film, but after the wake of the sexual misconduct allegations against Harvey Weinstein, Harvey's name was removed from the producer's credit, thus leaving the rights of the film to be auctioned off to Warner Brothers for $50 million. The film used a mix of pre-recorded and re-recorded performances for the songs. The film released simultaneously through WB's day and date release plan with HBO Max, and the film was not a box office success. And honestly, I tell you that if it wasn't for the day and date strategy that they did back then, if this movie would have been released now, I think you honestly would make that money back. But yeah, we don't talk about COVID times when it came to these movies. A lot of them really did like fall into the cracks of making that money. I think I saw like the second week it had like a 60% decline, and I was like, ooh, that's rough.
Yeah,
Yeah, but hey, at least it was able to get made, right? You know, they were able to make it.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know why there was so much struggle around making this movie because it's very current. Like, yeah, the musical is really set in 2008, which you can clearly see in like the clothing choices that
Oh
they
yeah,
picked for the actors. Like everyone is wearing Ed Hardy and like tiny denim shorts, which is,
yeah,
you know, obviously, but it's still adaptable to every single year after 2008. Like it could have been made at any point and it would have been still relevant. And the thing is that they for the musical they did like touring companies and they went like to other states and they made a production in the UK.
mm-hmm.
But the story is still very current. So there shouldn't be a problem, but I think the main problem had to be obviously the fact that it's a musical
Yeah,
and no one, not a lot of people really understand musicals outside of a theater context, you
yeah,
know? So, like, yeah, you go to the theater and you expect to see these people dancing, singing, whatever. But when you go watch a movie, you feel like it's out of place for some reason. Like, the
yeah,
suspension of disbelief is a little, like, fluctuating there in the film industry, media, whatever.
yeah,
Um, and also especially because whenever um, producers make a musical, they want to pick famous actors, right? That's what they did with Les Mis. Like they picked Hugh Jackman, who I mean he is a singer, but you know, and they picked Russell Crowe, and they picked Eddie Redmayne. Like they were already big names when Les Mis came out. Uh, but for In the Heights, like you're mentioning Jennifer Lopez and Shakira, I think that's a little crazy. Like
yeah,
because you need to have a certain like you don't need to be only a singer. You need to be a musical theater singer.
mm-hmm.
You know, and there like this score and the music that was made for the musical requires specific technique and specific type of singing voice that a pop singer is not going to have, which is going to happen with the Wicked movie. Like I can tell with Ariana Grande being
Yeah,
there because it like she had musical theater training before, of course, when she was little, but she's a pop singer now, so I'm gonna be very surprised if she actually manages to like do that. But anyway, the point is that Jennifer Lopez and Shakira are pop singers. Like they're especially Shakira. Like Shakira has a very specific type of voice. How is she going to sing these
yeah,
high notes and how is she going to belt out a note? Like that's not gonna
yeah.
happen, right?
Could have only imagined her going Biragua, Biragua. like,
Yeah,
like what
yeah, it
is
would have been.
that? Like, I know.
And like the thing with the movie too is that they made it because Hamilton became popular. Like Hamilton was a
Mm-hmm.
success, and In the Heights was fine. Like it made well in on Broadway, and it won a Tony for like best musical of the year in 2008, 2009 actually, and it was very good. It was fine. People loved it, and then kind of passed. And then Hamilton came along, and more people became aware of In the Heights,
Mm-hmm.
which is still like this very sort of American story. Like it's specifically set in New York. It's specifically about Latino immigrants. It's specifically about the issues that they faced back then when Lynn made the musical 2001 to 2008, and
Mm-hmm.
afterwards, which have only become worse. Like
Yeah.
they haven't gotten better, especially in that particular neighborhood in New York. And not only for them in New York, but also for every other like big community of Latinos anywhere else
Yeah.
in the US, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Well, I mean, I read and I was like, you know, I have my thoughts on this film, and I, especially on the second watch, I have more thoughts than I derived from when I first watched this. But I'll say this: I'll take this version any day over whatever they thought they wanted to make with Shakira and Jennifer
yeah,
Lopez back then, because yeah, I'm good off that. I think it was a better choice to wait all these years and to do it with Anthony Ramos, Melissa Barrera, and um, uh, what's her name? She was gonna play Batgirl. Like Leslie Grace. All these different actors who, like, honestly, you can tell, like, they're made for this. Like, they know how to do this stuff. And yeah, but I I I I know there would have been a nightmare fuel to have seen that version with Jennifer Lopez trying to sing these songs, and I would have been like, no, 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 this is
yeah. I think they would have made it a huge disservice
yeah,
to the story and the score again, because that's what matters in a musical,
yeah,
the score and when you make of it. And um, I think, I don't know, like one of the other controversial points about it was that Lin sort of inserted himself in the movie
yeah.
as the Piragüero, which in the
Well,
show was played by another man who's
yeah.
actually a good singer.
So I read up on that because I was doing my research, right?
Yeah,
And apparently, that was they Lynn didn't want to do that, but um, the producers said this is such, like, we want you in this movie, like, you're part of this, like, is part of your career, and, like, this is obviously something that's so big with you. But Lynn was pushing so hard to be like, I don't want to be in this movie, and, like, but I want somebody to do that song. The producers literally said, we will remove this song from the film if you do not do it. And Lin Manuel Miranda had to do it because he felt that the song was really important to the film and that he wanted it to be in there. So he, he accepted it and he put himself in there.
yeah, because again, it has to do with the fact that the movie was made because of Hamilton.
Yeah.
So they people know Hamilton. They know his face from Hamilton touring and promotion and social media and all that stuff. Like they know his face, and then they know him every time he worked. Like when he worked in Moana, they said, "Oh, Lin Manuel Miranda from Hamilton," right? So people
Mm-hmm.
associate him with that. And now in the Heights, the movie was associated with Hamilton, and he had to be in it,
Yeah.
obviously. Like it couldn't just be his name, because even in the poster, there's his name, and then on the side it says like from Hamilton, and it has the Hamilton logo on it,
Yeah. Yeah.
which was a
And
strange choice,
if I
but yeah,
remember correctly, that year they also had put on Disney Plus the Hamilton production. You know.
I think so. I think they
Yes.
did. I
So
think, yeah, because it
yeah.
was during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So business is business, and they really wanted to bank off of what
yeah,
he had there. But yeah, I think we're ready. Are you ready, Alejandra?
yeah, sure.
Well, this is our conversation on John M. Chu's In the Heights. So I would be remiss if we don't, actually kind of address the elephant in the room. And honestly, I kind of want to go off with this first because I don't want to have to bring it up any more into the film, because I think it was a huge part of this film and the whole like controversy surrounding it. And I don't know, because I mean like I don't think I look at it differently now. I think I still kind of look at it. I think I look at the controversy surrounding this film in the way of like how it was treated online, and how we had like I'm somebody who spends a lot of time in the film space. I mean I'm a critic, goddammit. Like I have to spend a lot of time. So you know so when the whole controversy came out about Lynn's erasure of Afro Latinos in this film, and of course, as I'm speaking to somebody who's Latina as well, I thought that was important to bring this up here. And at least when it came to the online presence of this controversy, I noticed how like it was it was like very so like of course any conversation on Twitter will be toxic, right? But in the way that it was like I saw that it was like Latinos trying to start this conversation and have an actual conversation about um, about Latinidad and really what it means to like you know show the wide spectrum of Latinos in film. And it was being overrun and kind of being like pushed aside by non-Latino critics who would come in and be like, "Oh, this doesn't matter. Like why are you making this a big deal?" And to the point that I saw some people who like, and it's like it's still stuck in there. It's very permanent. I remember these tweets, even though y'all can delete them. I remember them really well. But I saw some people who swear they are like the biggest allies, right? Who would say it's not the movie's job to represent everyone. And I was like, okay. Um, so like that conversation just completely got like derailed, and it became like this space where it was everybody was like, no, 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 you can't have this conversation right now. Like not when this movie's here. Like we really like this movie. Don't have this conversation. Like this isn't your space. When it's like, ah, we kind of just came into here creating our own conversation here and having our space here to talk about this, and it's being overrun by people, quite frankly, not from the community, who want to say like, oh, this isn't this doesn't matter. And I looked at at this controversy and I said, yeah, I understand where some of the comments were coming from on like the defense and the offense of it. So some people were saying like, oh, like like, oh, you wanted the clear representation of what it is to be Afro Latino. It's like you have some in here. Like there's Dominicans who are like obviously of Afro descent, but they were like, oh, you specifically want a specific look of it that says like, oh, that's what an Afro Latino is supposed to look like. I got that, where it came like, oh, like that's obviously something that's wrong when people are bringing out this controversy. But also I understood where people were coming, were like, hey, like they're always ostracized and they're always pushed aside, and it's like when are they going to finally be shown on screen? Which is like, yeah, I understand where both sides were coming from. I wanted to ask specifically, like, how did you see that controversy when the film came out versus how you see it now as a, somebody who saw the film like what, 2 years later?
Yeah. Well, ugh, I mean, the movie was set to come out in 2020, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And they announced the cast before that. And from what I remember, people were like excited about it. Like they were happy. They were like, oh, yeah, that's cool. And they cast actual singers, whatever. And then it was postponed because of COVID. And then
Mm-hmm.
it came out. And when it came out, the conversation was a lot different than it had been when the cast was announced, because it's not as if it was a surprise that these actors were in the film, right? And like it's not like they came out of nowhere. Like we knew for a year who they were, right?
Yeah.
The movie comes out, and then I started seeing all these comments, but the thing is that I saw them coming mainly from non Latinos for the most part, uh, but specifically like in people of color groups. for discussion and stuff like that. They were talking about like, oh, how like you just use black people for like to be your accessories in your little paperback film. Like I remember that specifically. I saw that it was like a TikTok or something. They called like I think it's the shot when they're in the pool,
Yeah.
and you know how like I think they used like a copy paste of the same shot multiple times in the frame because it was water, so they wanted to avoid splashing and all that stuff. So they have like the same person, like I think 3 times in the screen, and it was like, oh, so you couldn't cast more black people in your film because this is a film for like you have these bunch of paperbacks in the main cast, and it was like, what are you talking about? And it was a TikTok, and this woman was not Latina, from what I remember. And most of the other people who were mad about this were also non Latinos. And when Actual for Latinos came front and were like, well, yeah, I get this. Like, this is an important part of especially Washington Heights culture.
Hmm.
And there are a lot of Black Latinos in there, and that's it matters, of course. But uh, you know, Latinidad is a spectrum. Some of us are white, some of us are not, and yeah, you can like you could have done maybe an effort to cast more Black people in the movie who are Afro Latinos, whatever. But then we forget the fact that Daphne Ruby Vega and Dasha Polanco and all of these women and other men in the cast are Afro Latinos, but they
Yeah.
just don't look like Afro
Like the
Latinos.
image, yeah, that they have in their head of what they're supposed to look like.
Exactly, exactly, because all of us as Latinos are still very exoticized
Hmm.
by Americans and everyone else, but mainly, you know, in this specific case, Americans of all ethnicities who think that we have to look a certain way. And when we don't, then that's put into question. So, of course, Afro Latinos face anti blackness on top of that sort of exoticization of Latinidad
Hmm.
that a lot of Americans have. But when it comes to like lighter skinned people, we are not also considered like Latino enough.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you're being excluded because like what do you know about being Latino, right? You're white, so like you face no discrimination. Like, yeah, maybe I'm white in my country, and maybe I'm not going to face any oppression in my country because of my skin color. But when I go to across the border and I talk the way I talk and I do the things I do and I eat the things I eat,
Yeah.
they're
Oh,
gonna look at me and they, yeah,
I'm willing to bet that if Alejandra and I took a nice little trip to rural West Texas and she spoke exactly how she's speaking right now, she will not be treated like a white woman. I'll tell you that
exactly,
right
exactly,
now.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's such a complicated thing too, because the movie is not meant to represent uh, all types of Latinidad either, because it's diaspora.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the Latino diaspora living in New York. That's what it is. So me over here in Mexico, like that's not my reality, right?
Hmm.
And for my friends who are, I have a friend who is Puerto Rican, but they live in New Jersey, so that is not their reality either. Because yeah, they were born in Puerto Rico and now they live in New Jersey, but these are people who are born in New York. Some of them emigrated, especially the older generation,
Hmm.
and you have that sort of very specific and I don't know, like concrete look of the situation
Yeah.
that really can't accommodate
Yeah.
everything. And whereas I think that they could have definitely cast some more Afro Latinos in the film,
Of course.
which would have been definitely important and relevant for the discussion about Afro Latinidad specifically.
Yeah.
Um, I think that they did what they could.
Yeah. And I honestly, I think we need to look at it also with the lens of like that. They did what they could, and what like they like. I try to say this without sounding as rude as I can, right? Because sometimes it's hard to understand the context that I say some stuff sometimes. But it's like the industry isn't as open as you all think it is. And I I would love for me to sit here and tell you that it's as diverse as you all think it is. And it's changed a lot. It's changed a lot, and that's a really, really good thing about it. But it has not changed in the way that it views Latinidad, and that is the very sad part because it's like it feels like everybody else has progressed. Everybody else is kind of it's everybody else is getting more opportunities, right? But in the way that the industry in Hollywood in general views Latinidad has not changed, and that's mostly a reason why this movie ended up looking the way it did. And like I said, a lot of that controversy was misconstrued in the way that like yes, a lot of your outrage is coming from your very limited view of the diaspora. And I will never understand like where it's like where it's somewhat controversial to bring up the fact that the diaspora literally touches every color. And for you to sit there and say there's just not enough Afro Latinos and to see clearly Afro Latinos on that screen is very invalidating into the way that you're like saying that, oh, well, their identity isn't enough. You know, they need to look exactly the way that I picture it. And it's like, no, it's exoticization and it's also low key kind of fucking racist.
Yeah, definitely. Because also, like, oh God, let's think of how many movies with an almost full Latino cast have come out
Yeah.
in the last 20 years. Like, how many? Like, I can't think of any right now
Nope.
other than In the Heights
In the
and maybe the
Heights.
West Side Story remake, you know?
Blue Beetle's coming out in August 12th over here. That's gonna have a
Yeah,
mostly Latino cast, but like
but that's the thing that one movie isn't going to fix 100 years
yeah,
of Latino erasure in Hollywood.
yeah,
And another thing is that white people get to have every single type of movie they want. Like they can have musicals, they can have comedies, they can have trashy, horrible, disgusting, bad films. They can have the best films. And we, as Latinos, with one film, we are supposed to be perfect. And
we're
that is
supposed to, yeah,
another thing.
fix like 70 to 90 years of like the damage that has been done in this industry.
Yes, exactly. Because, like, even the diaspora isn't really 100% sure on what their role in the spectrum of Latinidad is.
Yeah,
Because the way they experience their Latinidad is not the same as we experience it down here in Latin America.
yeah,
Because, like, they have to make do with American things. American housing, American health services, American food and produce, and all that stuff that they have things that we don't, and we have things that they don't. So their experience is a lot different from ours. And the way diaspora is portrayed is a very American way of doing it
mm-hmm.
because they're, again, making do, and that's completely valid, obviously. But yeah, like especially again, going back to Crazy Rich Asians, a lot of people were super mad at that film too. And what I saw happen was that a lot of Asian voices were being silenced
Yeah,
and pushed aside on criticism on this film over other people who weren't Asian who had something to say about the way Aquafina was speaking in the movie, about the way East Asians were portrayed, sorry, Southeast Asians were portrayed, and all that stuff.
mm-hmm.
When actual Asian voices were being like neglected, and the same thing happened with In
Yeah,
the Heights because, like, I don't know, people want to be the authority on, like, I hate to say this word, but like wokeness
yeah,
and like everything correct and perfect. And how
yeah,
come Latinos are expected with one film to
yeah,
like just make it perfect and have it be the Latino film, to be like the only one? Like, it's not progress if you want
Yeah.
one film to be perfect so that nothing better comes after that. Like, we have to make progress. And how are we going to make progress if the most well-known Latino musical in Hollywood was West Side Story with like one Latina and
Yeah.
everyone in brown face, you know? Like, we made that jump from there, and it took what, 60, 50 years?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're doing things.
Yeah. It always feels like everybody else gets to have these conversations with nuance, and it's like us, no, 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 no. You guys can't look at it from like a spectrum of being able to actually kind of, you know, digest everything that's going on. You guys have to look at it a certain way, and it's yeah, and that's it's just how how I saw it back then, and like looking at it now, and I'm like, yeah, like it's still the same thing. I felt like a lot of what my friends in the space and I tried to have a conversation, it was just completely quickly silenced, and it's like what the hell, like first like these are the same groups of people who will say, "Oh, it's national. It's like it's Latino Heritage Month, y'all. We need to amplify Latino voices." It's like, well, motherfucker, it's time for you to
Yeah.
amplify. Let me speak. Like, let me speak. You know?
Yeah, like how are you going to amplify Latino voices if you don't even let us speak? Like,
Yeah. But I had to go there, and that's a bit of like a transition too. It does speak a lot about like really what Latinidad is in this film, because we are looking at we're set in Washington Heights. It's this very populated area full of Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, Cubanos. You have it's a lot of Caribbean folk, um, and they have bodegas, and they have all these very uh, culturally significant things that belong to the New York Latino community. Because I'll tell you this right now, in Texas we don't have bodegas. In Texas we don't have bodegas. Yeah, that's yeah. Though I wish we did, so we could have the bodega cats, because those are the best part of the bodegas for sure. But we all can't have everything nice in this world. But I wanted to really get into that because I think that this movie does bring up a really, really important part about Latinidad, and it really just my journey with having to understand what Latinidad is, at least to me, is has always been a really like a really, I wouldn't say tumultuous, but it's always been like a really rocky journey for me, and really understanding what it is. And to be fair, I don't think I have gotten to that part yet. I don't think I have a cool, full, concrete answer to myself what Latinidad is to me. And honestly, I think that's okay. I think that's okay. I think that I'm still have so much time to figure it out. But I wanted to at least talk to you at least with the constructs of the film here and what Latinidad means within in the Heights.
yeah, I mean, I live in Latin America, and I didn't even know what Latinidad would mean for me. Like,
Yeah,
there have been hundreds of authors and like critics and whatever talking about what Latinidad is. And what it is for me, it's not the same that it would be for you or for people living in Washington Heights.
yeah,
But within the context of the film, I think it's definitely portrayed as also trying to understand their own identity and the role that it plays in their lives, because all of these characters have, at least at one moment, the realization that everything is harder because they are Latinos,
mm-hmm,
that everything is more difficult because of where they came from or where their parents came from, and that the things that make them who they are not that easily like disposable or like easy to reject. And also that it adds a lot of pressure on them. Again, what we were saying before, to be the Latino representative for whatever thing, you know.
yeah,
And I've seen that happen a lot with like Latino friends that live in the US, and they have that experience too. It's like, firstly, everyone thinks it's an accomplishment to live in the US, and which is very
I'll
funny
tell
to
you this
me,
right now. It hasn't been feeling like that in the last couple of years. It's especially right
for
now.
sure.
Especially right now. It's not felt like that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. But like over here, still, like, not only the US, but like Canada, even, which is more popular now, or any other country that's like first world, everyone thinks it's an accomplishment that you get to leave. Latin America, right? And
Hmm.
obviously back then it was um, even more difficult to do that because like war or like internal conflict, civil war, and right now is again like narco traffic,
Yeah.
uh, American interventionism, uh, and all that stuff that makes people leave their hometowns and their countries. But I think in the film, it's just like they're all trying to figure out what they're doing with their Latinidad and how they're using it to live their lives, and also to help each other to create like a sense of community that they lost when they left. Because like there's also this thing, this feeling about not belonging.
Yeah. And you
And
see
we
that a
see
lot
that.
with Usnavi. You see that a
Yes,
lot with
exactly.
Usnavi.
We see that a lot with Navi and with Nina also,
Hmm.
because I mean Nina is just the case for the Latina living in the US because like yeah, she's young and her parents are immigrants from Puerto Rico, and she went to college and it's a whole thing, but turns out that she just couldn't really do it, and it would be fine for anyone else, but it's not fine for her because she has this added pressure on top of everything to be like the representative of her neighborhood, right? Like almost the one who's going to legitimize all Latinos living in Washington Heights, and she's going to vindicate the immigrant, the child of immigrants, and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And of course, that's way too much to put on a single person.
Yeah. I mean, we've heard it from day, like, we've heard it from when we began to be conscious. I mean, they told us, tú vas a ser la persona que nos va a sacar de la pobreza.
Yeah,
You are
and
the
I
person
mean,
who's going to take us out of poverty. And
yeah,
it's
I
like,
mean, just it's crazy. It's
what?
so crazy because I mean, I live in Mexico, right? And I am like the first one in my family to go to college. So like uh, it's hard. It's difficult to be that person,
Yeah, to have that all that
especially
pressure.
yes, because just as Nina, uh, she's an only child. She's the only daughter, and everyone knows her because she was so smart when she was little, and she was like everyone believed in her, not only her family but also her neighbors. And because there is such a close knit community, everyone has that sort of implicit expectation on her, and it's hard. Like how she's 19, how is she going to deal with all of that? And
Yeah.
it's too much for one person. And Usnavi has a different sort of questioning there because, like, yeah, he works at the bodega and whatnot, but he has placed himself as sort of the maker or like the recipient of his parents' dreams, right? Like maybe his parents said something that stuck with him, but they didn't. We don't know them, so we don't know if they actually told him like, "Oh, you're gonna go back to the Dominican Republic one day," for us, right? Maybe they didn't say that, but the fact that they died in the U.S. and never got to live their dream has now made him almost obsessed
Yeah.
with that idea. And I don't know if you noticed, but Uzman is a very anxious person.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like
He's,
he's not chill like at all. He's very anxious, very nervous. He's always like doing and saying weird things, and he's awkward, and we think it's funny, but it's because he's anxious. Like
yeah.
the way he interacts with Vanessa is really it's funny, of course, but he's very, very, very anxious about everything. He's worried about everything all the time because he's really fixated on this idea that he's going to make money and then he's going to live, and that's it.
Yeah.
And Vanessa has that too, actually. Like maybe Snavi has a more like friendly life with his cousin and with Abuela, but Vanessa, like her mom is like an alcoholic, and she's she's having a horrible time, and all she wants is escape. Like she doesn't really want to leave, but she wants to escape. So she's also really obsessed with this idea. Like I need to make money so I can move somewhere else, and that's all she wants. And so she's willing to like leave everything she's ever known behind, because for her it has this load that she doesn't want to deal with. Like, yeah, I'm Latina, but I'm not this Latina, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think that those are parts that the film brings up about Latinidad that are like also really ignored in conversations. Like, the whole idea of like the generational pressure. Just like we become carriers of our ancestors' dreams that they couldn't do, and like like what do you they always tell us, like, our parents told us, like, we wanted to give you what they couldn't give us, and like we wanted you to, to go to college because I couldn't go to college. We wanted you to go to, to what's it called, to get a big paying job because I didn't have the degree to get that big paying job. And it's like, that's a part that this movie brings up. And there's also, the idea of like when you get here and you spend so long here, you dream about the day of going back to your home country. Um, and sometimes that home country isn't the same that you're going to return to. Um, and like I said, I don't want to get off topic, but I think a film that does that like really well is Ya no estoy aquí, that came out in 2020. Whereas like sometimes the place that you left isn't the same when you go back. And I think Usnavi kind of has that realization, especially with those, those pictures, and be like, oh look, like a, a hurricane just wiped out this place that I'm supposed to go back to take over and to like keep alive. And it's not going to be the same place. Like if I reconstruct it and I make it in the image of what he wanted it, my father and my mother wanted it to be, it's still not going to be the same place. It'll have the feeling, but it's not going to be that same place. It's not going to be that same dream. And I think that's a lot where the anxiety comes from him. It's like it's not going to be the exact version of the dream that they had. But is that me disappointing them? Or is that me trying to do things by how I'm trying to navigate the world that I'm in?
Yeah, of course, it's definitely putting that load on all of them. And I think all of them have that sort of load uh,
Yeah.
placed on their shoulders. Like, it's not in the movie, but in the musical, Nina's dad has a song talking about how his father was a sugarcane farmer and he wanted him to be a sugarcane farmer. And when he told his father that he wanted to do something great, he slapped him in the face and he said that he was useless and that he was dumb and that he could never aspire to any more than that. And so his dream was like to leave also. And then he leaves and goes to the US and then he has a daughter and then his daughter doesn't make it. So he feels like he failed. He doesn't talk about how she failed. He's
Yeah.
saying that he failed. So that's like, yeah, it's very, very intense. And that's something that even Latinos don't really talk about because I think we're like supposed to be proud of our Latinidad and be like, oh, celebratory and happy, like, yay, right? But a lot of it is really conflicting and it's
Yeah.
really hard to live within that reality.
Yeah. And sometimes that Latinidad is also a very like, it brings a lot of sadness with it. It brings a lot of like, a lot of pressure from, um, trying to amount to something, right? And that's and we could get into like a bigger conversation within the whole mental health thing within this film. And and I think that like that's why I think with this movie, this episode could go like to 2 hours, but we do not have the privilege of doing 2 hours. But a thing that really helps these characters to feel like, things are going to be okay and things can be fixed is because of that community that they have. But most importantly, the family, the role of the family. And I'm going to do this as a two-part topic here in the conversation, but also the role of abuela in this community. You really do feel the shift in this film change when abuela leaves. And I know you know this about me. I'm not the biggest musical guy. Not like, it's hard for me to find ones that I love, but um, in this movie, I love Paciencia y Fe. Sincere Fe is like the song that to me, like if you would have told me, what is one that really stood out to you, that was the one for me. That one was the one that I could say like I could listen to this, and I remember watching this back then. I teared up because of course that was it was really raw because I was barely like a year when my grandmother died. Now watching this now, having my mother just passed like a year ago, and now my grandmother being passed like what's like four now. I'm like, okay, this is a lot more raw, and it feels like so powerful. But that's the thing that at least Chu and company get really right about the community is the role of the family, and specifically the role of the matriarch. Of what I hear, like these kids are not related to her at all. And we're not talking about like, primos that were adopted and you started calling primo because they started coming around the house, but you found out at a certain point no. These kids are not related at all. She just never she never could have kids. So she just adopted the block. She's just like, hey, they're all my kids. And it's a really beautiful relationship to see on screen because you can see that all of them value what she has to say in her wisdom. And even though she is a little bit stuck in the ways of how it worked for her back then, especially in that scene with the dinner, where she was like, "Oh, your father's making money. Like, say thank you to him. Like, he's doing all these things for you." It's like, yes, but my father also isn't listening to me, to my side of what it's going on. And but the backbone of this movie is family. It is community. It is the people that are surrounding each other, and a big part of it also is the chosen and the actual family, right?
Yes, of course. I mean, yeah, the role of the matriarch. It's definitely a very important thing for the Latino community in general. Like even for Americans, like they have a really already internalized the idea of the abuela TM, um, and the one who knows, and So what this movie has, I think, is one of the beginners of the question adults movement in film, which
Yes.
I love, which I love, because we have that, and then we had, for example, another Latina grandma in Encanto,
Yeah.
who was like down the dumps, and it was horrible what she was doing to her family, and she was called out for it. So in the Heights, we have also these moments where we have seen what has been happening with Nina and her father, and we see Abuela being like, "Oh no, but he's your father. Like you have to be uh, grateful with him." And she's like, "Yeah, but he's also like not listening to what I'm saying. So, like, yeah, he's making money, but that's not all he has to do as my father, right?" And it's good that they do that sort of questioning, but they don't take away her humanity. Like she's not perfect, but also she's not completely flawed. She's just human.
Mm. I think we grow to understand that as people in this community is that the people that we were raised by aren't perfect, and that's something that I obviously had to come to terms with after my mom passed, and like I said, I like it is still very raw to talk about this, and it's very hard to talk about it. But I'll say that, you know, watching this movie, that's where I realized like, oh, there's a lot of things that were left unsaid. There's a lot of things that I wish that I could have said, and I didn't get the chance to say it, and I never will be able to get the chance to say it now. But a lot of moments in this film feel like that raw tension that is also a kind of a disconnect between the generations in the family. And it's like, yes, what worked for you back then was great. You were able to come home and your mom didn't give a shit about you. Like your mom probably didn't give a shit about the fact that you were what's it called going through some really hard racism at that school. Cool. But where I am in 2021 in this movie, what's it called? 2008, and I'm getting called. I'm getting Nina's getting her bag searched, and being told that she stole a pearl necklace. It's gonna affect her way differently than it would have affected you. Yes, to you, the parent, it was like, well, you show them that you're a nice, studious Latina who gets straight A's and makes money because that's gonna show them, right? No, that's not entirely, because you go into the workforce and they still don't give a shit that you be making all that money.
Yeah, it's definitely not that easy. I mean, it's a mixture between like, I think a lot of people in the older generation have to sort of um, keep their head down, be quiet, and just work hard. And like they have this belief that their work is going to speak for themselves.
Yeah,
And maybe like it's a sort of superficial respect that they get from other people because they still don't see them as humans. They see them as workers, as like
yeah,
machines and all that stuff. And they have sort of accepted that people are not going to respect them for being humans. So they have to earn that respect. And now the younger generation is really starting to question that. Like, no, I'm not going to keep quiet when this white bitch is calling me racist things on the street, right? Because
yeah,
that's what a lot of older generation thing they do is that, oh no, no, you don't talk back. You know, it's fine, just let it slide, let it happen. And it's, no, of course not, you know?
yeah. No,
And
it's why a lot of us have a problem with confrontation because we were
yeah,
raised to believe like, no, you can't talk back. Like, just let her go. Like,
exactly.
it's no, it's why we have a problem with confrontation now, because it's so hard to like to have these conversations and be able to
Yeah,
stand up, because like, it's crazy that our people have produced some of the biggest, you know names that were able to stand up and fight for our freedoms and do all these things, but you have taught us to hold that back
yeah,
and to be
yeah,
like, no, don't.
exactly. It's
Yeah,
a really sort of confusing message. Like you teach Latinos to follow these examples of like fighting and standing up for their rights and fighting for their rights. And then when they try to do it, it's like, oh no, 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 you don't do that.
no, no, no.
Like they did back in the day. Like Gloria and Saldua and all of these people, they did that, but
Yeah,
you don't,
Zapata can do
right?
it, but you can't. You can't. Yeah,
Exactly. And that's one of the things. Like within the context of family in the film, we have a lot of different types of families. And of course, there's Abuela and her huge block family.
mm-hmm.
And then there's Usnavi and his cousin, whose father, Mark Antony, which was very weird. Um,
Yeah. I didn't expect Mark Anthony to kind of play a deadbeat.
yeah, I didn't either. But I
Um,
gotta say, like, he looks the part, TBH.
100%,
Um,
100%. I 100% agree with you on that. He 100% looked the part. Um, but also, it's kind of
yeah, like,
odd looking at Mark Anthony now, knowing what we know in 2023 now about what Mark Anthony has been doing as of late. Ah,
yeah, it's a bit awkward, I think. But
yeah,
I mean, either way, he's just like the role of the like abandoning absent father who is also very common for Latinos, you
yeah.
know. I mean, it's common all around, I guess.
Oh
But
yeah,
there hadn't been like a really specific representation of it for Latinos because the fathers are not really like that relevant in many movies. Although for like white people movies, like the father is either abusive or he's like a ray of sunshine,
yeah,
and or like the Adam Sandler dad, that sort of thing. But in Latino media, he hasn't really been like given that much variety.
yeah,
And another thing I heard was that people really didn't like Mark Anthony's role because it was like, oh, stereotyping, oh, like saying that Latino fathers are bad. And it's like,
but
girl,
like, we can't give you this rose-colored glass look of our families. Like, not
exactly,
like, yes, we are a very family-oriented culture, but sometimes not everybody in this culture has a family like that. You know, it's if you want to call it stereotyping, I I'm sorry, but this is one of the stereotypes that's fucking right. Like this, like there's a whole lot of there's a whole lot of deadbeats or just absent in general, and
Yeah, yeah, you can't really pretend
that it doesn't
because,
exist.
yeah, because a lot of people think like every generation of Latinos has their own role to play within the Latino community in general. Like, there's the dad who's like, oh, he's strict and
Yeah,
he's like serious and like mean faced. But when he trusts you, he like makes bad jokes and he invites you to have beer and whatever. And like the mom who's loud, overprotective,
yeah,
um, but she's like sweet, so she's nice, right? The son who might or might not be doing drugs, or who might be like going to school and becoming like almost a millionaire. The daughter who is like everyone likes her because she's hot, right? The hot daughter. And she's pretty, but she's like tough and she's rough. And you have to like wear her down so she'll fall in love with you. Like that's everything that everyone thinks about Latinos and what our role is in within our culture and in society in general. And
yeah.
it sucks.
It
So
sucks.
when you get women like, for example, Vanessa is that character,
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, but then we find out that she's not, and the fact that her mom is an alcoholic is another like poke at the family thing as well. Like, yeah, we're very family oriented, but the younger generation is starting to leave that behind and is starting to question that, because if it was just any typical Latino movie, it would have been like, oh, I'm staying with my mom because she's my mom, even though she's horrible and she steals my money. Like,
Hell
but
no.
yeah, she stands up for herself and she decides, no, I'm gonna take my money and I'm gonna leave. And
Yeah,
she can fend for herself. She's a grown up, so whatever. We have that. We have Nina's dad, who is like, yeah, he's almost the typical Latino dad, but even he comes around. He manages to come around
yeah,
after all these things that happen around them and how he's being faced with the reality that his daughter is living in. He's not himself, the one who's going to college and the one who is like failing and the one who had to come back and the one who dropped out. Like, it's not him, it's her.
yeah,
So it's her moment, it's her reality. So he has to understand it and he doesn't have to force his reality onto her, which is something that I really like about this movie, that they, and the musical also, that they put these sort of moments of questioning. Uh, why? Because they're also, all of them are searching for their identity. Even though the grown ups think that they have it figured out, they don't really.
oh, they don't.
Yeah, and the young people are in that process and they are finding out that things are shitty and things are horrible and you need your family for that, but they don't understand what you are actually facing out there in the world. So these moments of questioning are really important, uh, because one thing that Latino families, and I think I've heard it from like Indian families, Chinese families, is that the grown-ups don't like to be challenged.
No, of course not. No.
They don't like to hear that their worldview doesn't work anymore, that they're wrong,
Yeah.
that they are not doing things right. And we see that a lot in like recent movies, again with Encanto and with Turning Red, even,
Mm-hmm.
and Everything Everywhere All at Once. Like, we have all these moments of parents who don't understand and grown-ups who don't get it, and something has to happen for
Yeah.
them to wake up. And in this movie is Abuela's death.
Yeah.
Yeah, she dies, and everyone, like, yeah, the dynamic changes. Even the cinematography changes, like the
Oh yeah.
photography in the film changes, the colors change,
Yeah.
everything, because she's like the glue of the block, and she's gone. So what are they gonna do without the figure that they perceived as their guide?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
And it leads them to kind of like realize that like, oh, if I don't put not just myself first, but also the people who I care about first, and like put their needs to, you know, put their needs in front of me, I don't think that they're gonna want to be around me anymore. And it's like, and if that happens, I sacrifice this community that I made here, and my relationships with every person in this community. And I think that that part just really, like you said, the photography changes. The photography, like, you see it. You have a really bright looking film at first. It gets to Abuela's death. It, like, the colors just start to go down. Like, it gets really cold, and then once, like, our resolution comes and our conclusion, like, it starts to get bright again. It starts to, like, feel like the colors are coming out again. And it's what comes with, like, such an ambitious musical. That's right. I think that's also why this movie probably didn't do as great as it did, is because it's a really ambitious musical. Like the numbers are bigger than I've seen most musicals do. Like, it definitely, like, the whole pool sequence is a lot, more ambitious than I've seen before. Another, like, I can't sit and tell you that this movie is the same, production value and the same, scope as La La Land, because it's not. It's not. And but
Yeah.
this movie does have like a big what's it called, a conversation on gentrification and displacement. The whole idea of the blackout. I mean, it's the whole, what's it called, the whole, what's it called, the thing that kind of glues this whole plot together is the fact that, like, we keep getting this countdown to the blackout. And yeah, they kind of bring up gentrification to this whole film. They're like, oh, like, they're kind of pushing us out, and, like, they're, like, bringing their, like, other shops here to, charge us. How much were they gonna charge Abuela for the blanket thing? It was like 114 or something like that per, like, towel
Yeah.
blanket or something. I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me! Like, what? You used to have like, a comadre that could do that for you for free. As long as you cooked for her or something, she'd be cool with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but like, the
And
yeah,
it's something really popular in like New York based movies about like specific ethnic groups. Gentrification is a very important thing, which we saw also in the remake of West Side Story when they made it really explicit, like the construction of Lincoln Center and how it affected everyone, not just Latinos, but everyone. And in this case, it's like, yeah, well, we've been here for a while, and now they're bringing Starbucks and they're bringing like um, real estate developers and they're building condos and all that stuff. And um, there is no moment of consideration of what that is going to do for the people who already live there. And one funny thing I saw specifically about the musical, when people were discussing like, oh, what's your favorite musical? And someone mentioned In the Heights, and it was like, I remember someone, a white person on Facebook, was like, oh, I didn't really like In the Heights because there is like the plot is kind of flimsy, and there is no clear enemy to beat there. And I was like, girl, you're the enemy.
it really sucks
Like,
to have your effect put on screen, huh? Like, like, show what exactly you're doing to communities be highlighted on screen, right? It's like, you get that
exactly.
side, right, and then you get people like Elon Musk who said, like, oh man, I loved Parasite. And it's like, hey bro, it's kind of about you, dude. What do you
Yeah,
mean?
of
Like,
course.
it's
Like
like,
you're getting lost in the like criticism of media,
yeah,
uh,
media literacy,
because
right?
yeah, media literacy, of course, because you're like missing the point. Like, yeah, this is about Latinos, but it's also about what challenges they face as Latinos. And it's not only the struggle with their own identity, but it's also the displacement that uh, American culture is pushing onto them. Like, they are resisting by listening to cumbias and salsas and having bodegas and hanging little flags on their apartments and speaking Spanish with each other and dressing the way they dress and doing their hair the way they do and their makeup and everything. It's a choice and it's an act of resistance. Like, you are looking this way in a city where streetwear dominates the fashion
Yeah,
strata, you
yeah,
know, like streetwear and like white, tall, skinny people wearing these things that, whatever.
Where what you used to be
Uh,
able to pick at Walmart for like $5 is now considered, to be streetwear, and you have to pay like almost 200. I will never, ever, ever stop bringing that up. Y'all, Champion used to be what you would go to Walmart to pick up. I have shorts that are
exactly.
Champion shorts that I'm sure that are all like they're still beat up and stuff, and I'm sure that if I would go to the right hype beast, I could sell it to them for $300 because it's Champion. But guess what? When I bought those shorts back in the day in Walmart, I didn't pay more than $5 for them.
Exactly. And that's one of the things, like on the stage production, like having them wear Ed Hardy stuff, which is horrible. Like I hate Ed
I'm
Hardy.
glad we got past that era, by the way. I will
I do
never
too.
stop being thankful that we got past. It was
I
like,
do too.
why did we think that that was good?
I don't know. But the thing is that it was such a big moment for Latinos. Like Ed Hardy was a Latino thing at one point.
yeah,
Like
100%.
yeah, the shirts, the jeans, the hats, everything Ed Hardy head to toe. Also Von Dutch was also a Latino thing. And then when it was no longer a Latino thing, it was a white people thing.
Yeah,
Like, oh, Ed Hardy, oh my god, it's vintage, and now they are like hunting for Ed Hardy shirts on Depot or whatever, and they're very expensive. So like the same thing happens, like you said, with Champion and all that stuff, and the way they are dressing in the movie is usually very like uh, practical for their life in the New York summertime, but it's also like what you would associate with a non-white person wearing around uh, other people in the city. Like
hmm
the salon women, the salon ladies, what they're wearing, their nails, the hair, the makeup, the clothes, everything just screams Latina hairdresser.
hmm
And, and it is. It definitely is because it's part of the culture, it's part of the movement. And again, it's an act of resistance because they are walking around their neighborhood where it doesn't look weird, but
yeah.
now they're moving the salon downtown. So they are going to look a little bit weird.
And you start to strip that part, and it's also kind of stripping the identity from them, because we've created these communities. These are places where we've been for ages, and generations of our ancestors are here, and we create these communities that are like it's our home away from home. It's like, why do you think they call it Little China? Why do you think they call it Little Italy? Why do you think they call it like Little Mexico? Because it is. It's we've been here for generations, and we created this space that feels safe to us. And now this force that's trying to push us out comes in to raise the rent and the property taxes, and we can no longer afford it. And it's like, oh, once again I'm being forced to flee my home. Once again I'm being forced to figure out a new life for myself. And it's a big part of the movie, and it's like it's a really important part that I don't I don't think that a lot of people really paid attention to that part. Um, but once again, that's a whole conversation on media literacy that we could have too, where nobody was really paying, they were really were like bringing that up, and it's like, yeah, it's like, that's kind of what happens when you open your coffee shops on these corners, and that's what happens when you open up your yoga studios and all that. And it's like we start to see a tear down of the communities that are built.
Yeah, and it has to do also with like uh, the questioning of the American dream situation. Like the older generation also had that thought, like, oh, when you leave to the U.S., everything is gonna be easier, and you're gonna get everything you ever wanted, and you're gonna have a house, and you're gonna be safe, which is the most
Yeah,
important thing. Like every older person who's Latino, who's an immigrant, they
yeah,
wanted um, safety, and they wanted to protect their families. And now, I mean, over here, we know that the U.S. is anything but safe. Um, but also the fact that, I mean, my neighborhood is fine. It's not being gentrified yet, but where I work is a very, very, very gentrified neighborhood, and I work there because I speak English. And a lot of the people who work there, and a lot of the people who live nearby, and who come to my workplace to buy things, are tourists, and they're American or they're Canadian, but mainly American. And every business in like the nearby vicinity has menus in English, has staff that speaks English, has menu items explained in English. The only thing that hasn't changed is like the names of the streets, but some people have put up signs that say like the name of the street in English.
Yeah.
And the counterpart is that there have been people putting up signs that say, "Go back to your country. We don't want you," stuff like that,
What
right?
the fuck are we here? Yeah. Oh no, for them, yeah, yeah, hell yeah.
For them, for
Go
them, for them.
back,
Yeah,
go
yeah,
back.
yeah. Yeah, or people who are like offering Spanish lessons. Like that's the only neighborhood where I've seen posters for Spanish lessons.
Oh my
Um,
god.
and of course, rent is very expensive. Uh, Transportation is expensive. Uh, there are a lot of like um, bike parks because everyone loves their fucking bicycles.
Yup.
Uh, I don't get it, but anyway.
You remember the
Um,
days when you used to be considered poor because you rode a bicycle? Now
exactly.
everybody wants to rent one because oh, it's
Everyone,
so
yeah,
easier and it's like trendy and it's like yeah, my grandfather used to be called poor because he had to use a fucking bicycle and it's like no.
yeah. And like I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of like vegan places, a lot of like
Yeah.
holistic stuff, and it's like like I don't like it there. Like I work there, but
It
it has
feels like a different
strange.
part of where you're
It
of where
feels like
yeah.
a completely different place because when you like the store where I work at, it's like on almost on the corner of an avenue, and when you cross the avenue, it's an entirely different neighborhood that is a mess. Like it's full of crime and people who steal like cars and they like mug you and all that stuff. So when like these gringo in shorts crosses the road, like they're gonna get like wiped out clean. And so it's weird that just like four lanes of cars separate these universe from the other,
Yep.
and they don't even know it. They don't even think about it. And
Yeah.
the rents are expensive. Uh, Food is expensive. And for me, working there, having to eat sometimes in that neighborhood is a nightmare because everything is, and I'm not kidding, fucking disgusting,
Oh
but
yeah.
also very expensive.
It makes you kind of
And
wish that you woke up like a couple hours earlier just to cook your food because you don't want to have to
exactly,
pay.
like what I do is that I buy my food from that other neighborhood across the avenue because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
And it's uh, really hard, but also lately I've seen a race on Americans posting, making content about like, oh, how
Oh
to tips on how to move to Mexico.
yes. Oh
Like,
yes.
but
Yes.
I hate it. It's horrible.
Yeah. Well,
And
like I said, it all goes back to exoticization.
mhm,
It's like yes, like this land, like, and that's what it is. Like they see these neighborhoods like Washington Heights as a completely different part of New York. So they
yeah,
decide
and
this
you
is
want to
so
conquer it.
exotic, it's so different, so I need to conquer it. I need to make it different. Like I need to
Mhm,
make it look like the image of the New York that I know.
yeah,
And if we can make it nice, if we can, expensive, maybe it can start to look like the, you know, what's it called? The New York that I know.
yeah, exactly. And it's also like these, how just how entrenched in their minds the American dream is
Yeah,
that not even living in another country stops them from
yeah,
wanting to colonize,
yeah,
you know. And yeah, of course, it happens in a lot of neighborhoods in New York. It happens in a lot of neighborhoods across the US. It's happening here. It's happening in other states in Mexico. And especially in Mexico, a lot of is going on here. And it was mainly at the beginning, like people who are retired and they wanted to move somewhere else and spend their retirement, mainly that. But now is digital nomads. So like they come here and they work online and they earn in dollars, but they spend in pesos and they pay taxes in the US, but they don't pay taxes here. So they're basically like leeching off uh, resources from a country where they're not paying anything.
isn't it crazy that they become the one thing that they tell us that we are in this country?
Exactly. Because
Oh,
like Latinos with green cards and citizenships pay taxes.
yes.
They, they have to do all these things. They have to be like on tip top shape in their tax situation, especially immigrants,
Yeah.
because if not, then you are going to become a felon and you're going to get deported.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
yeah, so, uh, and the thing is that the government here has been allowing that too because of that same mentality
Well, because they kiss
of,
ass. Because they kiss
yeah,
ass. Like it's just like, oh, like we keep them
exactly.
long enough, we can what's it called, make them happy, and like they'll
Mhm.
bring us more money, and like
Yeah,
yeah, and it's kind of that same way in the movie because I know that there was people in there who were like, no, let them stay, like it helps us, and it's like, no, dude, what's it called? You let them stay, you let them get their way. They just start slowly stripping parts and parts of you, and start stripping parts of your culture. Where it's like, oh, I wake up and it's like, oh crap, whatever to the music. Now I get call now I get the police call on me because I play my fucking salsa at this time. I'm like, okay, you
yeah.
know,
That's the thing. Like in the neighborhood where I work, the other day I saw a banner in English that said, "You want to make money? Invest on an Airbnb ready building," and it had the address. And I was like, "Okay, what's that?" And it was nearby, and I went to see, and it's a building that was old. It's like from the 60s, 50s, 60s, and they emptied out all the people who live there. I don't know what happened to them. And the people who bought the building, they turned every apartment into tiny apartments for Airbnb,
babies.
uh, renting them on Airbnb. And they want people to invest in that because like that's gonna make them a lot of money, obviously because passive income. So,
Yeah,
um, and it's been happening a lot in a lot of neighborhoods. And a funny thing that happened the other day is that there's a neighborhood near downtown that's like uh, the epicenter of crime in the city, and they built an apartment building like sort of on the edge of that neighborhood, and they called it an entirely different name. Like it's in the neighborhood. Yeah, the neighborhood has its name and it's in there, but they call it like Reforma Norte or something, which like the avenue that divides one and the other. It's called Reforma. So Reforma Norte on top. Uh, and it called like a building, and it's like millions of pesos, and it has like a roof garden and like a gym, and it looks so out of place. But the people are gonna buy it, and then when they start gentrifying the neighborhood, firstly, a lot of people are gonna die, like I can tell. But also, like, um, it's going to it, it's going to fall harder on the people who already live there because of the stigma
oh yeah,
that they have for living there. But for other people, it's very like, oh, it's exotic, it's unique, right? It's
yeah,
authentic, which is like the buzzword for I want that.
yeah. Well, I mean, like yeah, now it's like this big with gentrification comes this big obsession with being unique, being different, and being like, oh, like this is so like different. Like I need to conquer it. I need to like feel like it's part of mine. But it does 100% go back to the American dream. It does go back to this idea of like, I need to keep progressing here. I need to make a fuck ton of money. I need to, what's it called? Like that's what the American dream is. But part of the American dream that people don't talk about is the idea of like conquering. It's like like oh I need to own my business. I need to own my what's it called my own like my own real estate. Like I need to, and like who cares if
Yeah,
I push these immigrants out and I what's it called put them to the street. Like it's because it's part of my dream. It's part of like what I need to do. And it's like no, like this is like your disregard for communities, and it also all ties back to this American obsession with individualism, where it's like, oh,
yeah,
it's only about me. It's only ever about me. Whereas, like, these immigrants come here and they're like, like, oh, they still have this idea of like community and they have their love for community, but they also do kind of have a little bit of like, oh, I do need to put me first. And yes, that's good. But like, where you become fully concentrated on the individual, it's like you start to lose the idea of what how important community is. Um, I had,
yeah.
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that like the whole American ideology of the American dream is rooted on like Puritanism. Yeah, like
Yeah,
the Puritan uh, idea of like, oh, find this land, work on it, keep working, working forever and forever and forever, and then you're gonna make a lot of money and you're gonna be fine.
yeah,
That's like, you
that's
know,
what it is.
but it has a lot to do with like really the difference in religious perception of society, because whether we want it or not, our societies are built on religion. And for Latinos, it's Catholicism. So
Hmm.
Catholicism is not a culture of like keep grinding and grinding and you're alone. It's a culture of sacrifice
Yeah,
and a culture of punishment, which makes it really hard for us to like first of all get
yeah,
rid of the guilt that Catholicism has brought on many of our lives, but also the entrenched guilt that has been put onto other things that have nothing to do with religion.
yeah,
you know like again, like you said, putting myself first. No, no, but how am I going to put myself first if Catholicism taught me that I have to care for my sibling and my brother and whatnot? Like, how am I going to do that, right? So we have these different and ideologies that culturally affect us more than we want to recognize, I guess.
yeah,
But it's, yeah, a lot.
yeah. One thing that this movie, and this will be like the last talk, because we are getting close to here to the end. I did find it kind of odd the way the film kind of brings up dreamers. I do have my gripes with this movie, and I think part of it feels a little rushed, part of it feels a little bit draggy, and I think that this movie could have been edited down a bit. But the dreamer part here was really interesting that they brought up, and really that part where like I think one of the most effective parts of this movie is when Usnavi's cousin brings up like oh college like am I gonna be able to do that? Like I'm undocumented. Like am I gonna have like? And it's a very real reality that at the time that they released this movie, I believe the DACA stuff was like the hot topic at the time about like whether they were gonna keep DACA or they were gonna what's it called completely remove it. Um, and it was very interesting to see that and like that very real fear like you have because you have kids who yes you raise them and you're like yes mijo you need to get an education, that's the one thing I'm giving you, you need to get it, you need to go to college, and it's like wait but I don't think I'm gonna be able to go because I fear deportation, and I fear you know, being what's it called, not allowed to go because I don't have the chance to apply for financial aid because I'm not a citizen of this country.
Yeah, I think that was like reminiscent from 2016 when they were like
Mm-hmm.
working on the movie with the Weinstein company, uh, because that was a moment where they were really like talking about DACA and all of that. Um, but I think like another piece of Latino media that I saw during that time was One Day at a Time,
Oh yeah,
and they they have this character whose parents get deported, and that's something that isn't really touched on a lot in Latino media, uh, or maybe not in the right way, because it seems like on documentation is always like a sword dangling on everyone's head, like
yeah,
oh they're Latino so they're undocumented, no question, right?
yeah,
So it happens in Knives Out too,
yeah.
like the mom is undocumented, um, so it's almost this plot point. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like a soap opera. Like, oh, but they're gonna find out that this character is undocumented. Like
Yeah,
it feels a little bit dramatic, although it's definitely real. Which is another thing that people didn't really like about the film. That oh, why didn't you make him undocumented? Like, why not?
yeah. Why not? It's a very real part of our community.
Yeah,
But nobody ever wants to really talk about the privilege that comes with citizenship. You know.
exactly. Because again, it's a diaspora thing. Like the diaspora that was born in the US, they want to think that they face the same level of danger and oppression that undocumented Latinos face,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't. Or like Latinos who live in Latin America, and they don't. They have a lot of privileges that they have to acknowledge before they even think about talking about their Latinidad and their role within the community, because it places them on a higher ground that makes them safe to say all the stuff that they are able to say and to be heard, because they are speaking in the language that we're speaking right now. And a lot of undocumented people don't speak that language,
Mm-hmm.
and they have things to say, and no one's hearing them because no one understands what they're saying. So that is a very important point, that, yeah, maybe like the undocumented character is almost a cliche at this point, but if people were mad that Afro Latinos weren't represented enough in the film, and they cannot be mad that undocumented people were represented in the film.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with
Yeah,
you. I agree with
like
you.
it's important, it's deeply relevant. And even like, I don't know, for some reason people thought that when Trump's presidency ended, everyone would be like saved, like, oh, we're okay,
Yeah.
we're fine now. And of course that's not true.
Hell no.
Of course, like, of course
Yeah.
that's not the case. um but I think like it's a very important conversation to have, not only within like the Latino community, but also with other communities and as a country in general, because it's something that can't be like neglected. And also another important point is that when you get a citizenship, an American citizenship, you have to sometimes renounce your previous one.
Yeah.
So like me, if I wanted to be a citizen, I wouldn't have to renounce my Mexican citizenship. But for Cubans, and Dominicans, I think they have to. A lot of other people have to,
Yeah.
and that's another dilemma. Like, okay, but if I become an American citizen, then I'm no longer what I have been all my life, even though I'm going to be perceived as that anyway, you know. And it's a really hard dilemma for a lot of people, and it's really important to talk about it.
Yeah. And it's just it's a very prevalent part. It's not as prevalent as it should be, if because and that's kind of why I have the problem with it, is because like it feels very shoehorned in. It's like, well, if you're gonna bring up this really important topic, I think that you should, provide the development that it deserves and the time that that it deserves to actually be put here. And it's like it feels shoehorned in, but I thought that it was really interesting to have to bring that up because it's a very relevant part about the community. It's a very relevant part about the way that the community navigates day to day life. But
Yeah.
wanted to ask maybe if there was anything else that you wanted to bring up that we haven't brought up before we get out of here.
Mm, Not right now, I don't think. No, I think I'm good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, because I always know that we'll like at least when it comes to me and I'm laying down in my bed and I'm getting ready to go to bed after I'm done with this, I'll be like, oh shit, I forgot to bring this part up. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think that we had an incredible conversation. I'm always reminded why I love bringing you on, because I know that we'll get into the things that not a lot of people want to bring up. Like a lot of people kind of want to shy away from it, and I think that sometimes we really do have a really always have a really good conversation. So thank you so much for coming on, Alejandra. You always are a pleasure to talk to. I always love talking to you and talking to about movies with you because you do a great job, and you're not done yet. Of course, you get to come back for another pick later in the season. But
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm really happy to be here. I love talking,
yeah,
and I I love to talk, and I love to talk about media, which is like one of
yeah.
my biggest passions, especially point out the things that people miss and calling out people who need to be called out. So
Yup. Um, but yeah, I appreciate you, but you're not done yet. I need you to do one thing before we get out of here, and it is the task that everybody gets, and that is to choose a movie that you will be returning for season 3 of the Cinema Condition to discuss.
yeah, for me, I think like, is it going to be either a movie or a trilogy? Because
You know what's gonna happen. You know what's gonna happen if you choose the one you're gonna think about. And
yeah,
yeah,
then it's definitely gonna be the X trilogy, X Pearl and Maxine,
Maxine.
which, like, come on, it has
Yeah,
to be.
I'm happy that you chose those though, because I think those are excellent films, and I can't wait to see Maxine. And honestly, by the way it's looking like it's gonna happen, and how I think that movie's gonna get released, I think you're gonna be the season finale. I think you're gonna be the season finale, season 3. I think we're gonna do those 3 films literally dead last. But those are great films. The accent's good, and I adored Pearl. I adored Pearl. I
Yeah,
thought it was fantastic. And yeah, for anybody out there who thought that you were gonna be able to call those films, I'm so sorry, but Alejandra just took them off the table, and she took the whole trilogy with her.
I
But
did.
yeah, you want to let them know where they can keep up with you on the internet and all that stuff?
Oh God, I'm gonna have to say my username again, right?
Ale, call me Pezza.
That thing, yes.
Yes.
That's my Instagram and my Twitter as well.
Yeah. You still have yet to change it, and it's okay
I
because
have
it's a
to, but I can never come up with anything. Like whenever I'm like, I need to change my username because when I buy things on Instagram, they have to write my name on like the delivery and they can't. So
like who the hell? What the hell kind of name is?
yeah, it's like what does that say? What is that? And I've had that username since I was like maybe 13, so maybe it's time.
Yeah.
It's time.
I don't remember if you told me where you got that username from.
Oh God. So there was this girl band called Little Mix, and one of the members is called Perry. They call her. They call like on interviews and stuff. I never heard the other members actually say the word, but I saw it written, and they call her like pets out, right? Like the diminutive of Perry. And I was like, sure, why not? So I put that on my username when I was 13,
Yeah.
and I haven't changed it ever since. So yeah, maybe it's time. She needs to go.
Well, thank you for joining us, and of
Yeah, thank you.
course, you guys can find me at the cinema. You guys can find me at the Energy Channel on all things social media: Letterbox, Serialized, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of those things. Sometimes I post about sometimes I post about movies on these platforms. Sometimes I don't, but most of the times I'm pretty much just talking about movies on there. So you guys should go follow me. Of course, thank you all for the love on the episodes, and I hope that you all have been enjoying it. I've been enjoying recording this series so far and these podcasts. I'm glad to be back on this and be able to have these conversations. Of course, I would love to ask for you all, if you're watching this on YouTube, click the notification bell when you subscribe. Make sure that you're subscribing. Leave a like on the video, as it helps us out a lot. But if you're on the audio side of things, you're not off the hook just yet. I need you to click on that 5 star on the review and submit that review for us. You can do it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and that's the only apps that I know that you can do it in. I don't know about the other ones, but if you can, please, if we're available on there, do it. We deserve it. Thank you all so much. We will see you all on another episode. I know that Alejandra will be here for another film. She will not say which film it is, but she will be back for another film later in the season. But for now, thank you so much for joining us. And, of course, to my wonderful cinephiles and renowned scholars, celebrate the love of cinema today, tomorrow, and every day after. Catch you all on the next episode.